My name is RAFAL. I work for a company called ExtraHop. Anybody know what we do? Network detection and response. If you're in the SOC, you probably know that term. We provide intelligence, context, and one of the only technologies you can't bypass or lie to, mainly because we're a silent tap on a network. And if you figure out a way to bypass the network while still making hacking happen, we should talk. Like interdimensional kind of stuff, maybe, but we'll see. So that's my day job. I run a podcast called Down the Security Rabbit Hole Podcast. Any listeners in the audience? Mike? Only because Mike's been a guest twice. I'm here this year because John made the entire thing White Rabbit themed, and I couldn't say no. So, yeah, Down the Security Rabbit Hole Podcast. It's on iTunes, it's on Google, it's on, I think, every platform I can think of, including apparently Amazon has a podcast platform, so we're there too. 12 years and counting, 519 episodes, lots of fun stuff in there. I encourage you to grab a listen. It's short format. It's meant for folks to learn. I use the term edutainment, and apparently at my own risk. But all right, so quick run through the agenda, the why, the what, and the how. It's going to be pretty easy to figure this out. Again, I encourage a highly interactive audience. Otherwise, this gets to be just preachy. I don't preach very well. Wasn't cut out for that. So let's talk about the why. We'll start there. All right, well, look, Houston, we have a problem in the most basic way, and that is that if you've tried to hire lately in the SOC space or in the security analyst space, you've recognized that to say it's a little difficult is probably the understatement of the millennium. Costs are incredibly high, and generally, if you taken the tack of bringing in junior analysts and that, hey, I'm going to train somebody up and they'll be loyal. They won't be, because they'll be gone as soon as you've trained them to go get double the pay with a bigger company, which happens what's that?
Plus then you have to train them.
Plus then you have to train them and retrain them. So the training part's the easy part. The retention is the impossible part. I know because I worked for a company that would train, we took a lot of junior cloud security, cloud architects, cloud security people, and about 5 minutes after they were done getting certs, they went to work for Amazon for 2.5 times the cost. So, you know. The other thing is, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but we're not exactly in an economic boom at the moment. We have got some serious global problems, and that means I'm pretty sure most of your budgets aren't exponentially growing. Not that that was going to happen anyway. So you're probably left with the old do more with less. And the way we mostly deal with that is we do less with less. We're pretty good at doing less with more, so doing less with less is even easier. And so we're sort of in this very strange environment. And a lot of you, I know because I've been on the vendor side and I've built the SOC and sold you the tools at some point. You do a lot of alt tabbing, right? Somebody told me last week at Falcon that the average SOC has around 85 security tools. I can't actually imagine that right now. We had a snort console. We had semantic antivirus. It'll kind of date me, but that's all right. And like 4 or 5 other things that we got telemetry from. And then we just shoved them into this mythical thing called the SIM. I don't know if you guys have heard of this thing. It's on like its 94th iteration, and at some point it's going to find a way to give us value. And I said this before, and I'll say it again. The value that your security program gets, the maturity of your security organization, particularly in the SOC, is inversely proportional to how many times you have to hit Alt-Tab. Does that make sense? Right? Because we built security tools so your brain didn't have to correlate between 7 different ways of displaying data across 10 different formats, right? And so many places, you look at data, you do an export, you dump it into a CSV file, you open up Excel, you take data from another spreadsheet, you dump that into Excel, right? And eventually you're doing the manual correlation that you've paid $1.5 million that your tool should be doing. But we've solved that by giving you SOAR, which makes you learn new tool. Never mind. That's going well. So the other problem in security is that we try to protect everything. And that's not the end of it. We protect everything from every threat possible, everywhere that it could possibly be, and forever and ever, amen. And that is not a sustainable way of doing security, right? We don't talk about this often enough, but security should understand the fact that things have a life cycle and an expiration date, right? If you understand cryptography, then you do know things have an expiration date. But it's interesting because we do the peanut butter approach to security. You spread everything gets protected equally, whether it's the CEO's laptop or the kiosk that shows the menu in the cafeteria. Like all of them, we do the same kind of security on, and that's also unsustainable. So the problem is security isn't infinite, nor is it indefinite. All right, we can't do security forever on everything. It's not a possible thing. So downscoping is important, and then you start to sound like a PCI DSS analyst or a compliance person, right? Downscope. So look, I don't think it's a mystery. I think it's fair to say that security teams without some sort of really good focus tend to fail. And they tend to fail really hard. And the reason for this, I think, is relatively simple. It's you're trying to find patterns across multiple different types of landscapes, multiple different environments, things behave differently. How many of you guys here have industrial equipment on your networks? This is farm country, so I imagine some people would. There's a big green logoed company around here somewhere that that does that. Technology can be a force multiplier, but technology is not the solution in itself, no matter what the salespeople will tell you. Right? If there had been a magic box in this industry in 26 years, I promise you I would have found it, and I would have been working for that company. There is not. I don't have any hope that in the next 20 years I'll find it. In spite of what the Gartner analysts will tell you. So scope reduction is key. And then you start to sound like, a compliance person. Well, okay, what does that actually mean? How do you reduce scope on a global network or even on a branch network? Anything reasonably sized. Anybody have like really old tech on your network still? How many of you guys run Telnet? You're delusional. I bet there's Telnet in every single one of your networks. You know how I know? We publish a report every year. Because we sit silently and watch packets flow by, every single packet, the full packet itself, and we analyze every single one of them as they go by at about 100 gig, right? So after a year of observing hundreds of customers, almost consistently in every market segment there is still Telnet right now. What year is it? Telnet? Seriously? The thing that we got rid of back in, 97, 98, maybe early 2000s? But it exists. In fact, some of the more impressive ways of solving security problems in the industrial space is with a serial cable. Whose laptop still has a serial port?
So why is that? Is so much legacy old crap still out there?
Because things have a duty cycle of decades, multiple decades, right? When you're looking at things were not meant at the time, and it's funny to look back at it and say, well, they weren't meant to do this, but they weren't built to have a 3 to 5 year disposable cycle or a 12-month cycle like your iPhone. They were built to be put in place in places that last and last and last. There are still shop floors, and I know there's at least one around here, because I know the person that laments about it all the time, that still have Windows 3.11 running a punch clock. Running on wait for it, 386.
So that is old legacy crap by now, right? I mean,
It is. It's old. It's old legacy crap, but it works. And so the problem is it's not going away because it still does the job. And I bet you there's nobody writing 0 days for Windows 3.11. to say it's, maybe not. So the point is, if you want to stand a chance, you can't leave this stuff up to chance, which means when you're looking at your, whatever dashboard you look at when you log in the morning to tell you the state of your stuff, you can't treat everything equally, and it's not going to make sense. Because a lot of you guys get things that yell at you all day long, and you can't get to them all. So, all right, what am I talking about here? So, I said this at a CrowdStrike conference to people that all believe that they are being attacked by nation state by a company that caters to that. That's what they started with, right? But the reality is, not everyone is a target of a nation state super hacker. Now, the problem is, some of you are. And knowing the difference is really important, because a ride-hailing company apparently got taken really roughly by a nation-state super hacker. No, that's not true. 17-year-old, pardon my expression, dumb, who couldn't keep his mouth quiet. Well, there's younger ears in the audience, right? So, but look, when 17-year-olds can absolutely have their way with your Ethernet connections and your network and everything that you do in your cloudy clouds as well, you're probably not, like, when the attacker is sitting on your Slack channel making fun of your system admins and telling you how weak your passwords are, I don't care what SIM you're running, okay? You are not winning at security. Also, if you're disagreeing with them like calling bullshit on that person, probably not the smartest thing to do. But the question matters. I think it matters. I think it matters what you're protecting, who you're protecting it from, how long you have to protect it, and what kind of defenses you have. And so I've thought about this for years, because I've been in and around managed services for the last 7-8 years, okay? This job is a little different because I'm now selling technology to those people. But the problem that every corporate SOC, every SOC as a service, MSSP, like pick one, pick all of them, they all do the exact same thing unless they have a plan, and that is they look at tell you, log everything, send it into us, we'll do magical wizardry, and we'll find out the ones that matter. Well, they don't work for you. So unless they have some insights that you've given them, or that's magical, they don't know what actually matters to you. Although I would posture that a lot of security people don't actually know what matters to you, because you haven't taken the time. I will give you a quick story about this. There's a company in the general Midwest that develops some of the really cool glassware that some of my favorite brands out there use. And I did an exercise with them. It's been almost almost 9 years ago. And I brought in the security team because we're going to do a security strategy for them, right? Help their new incoming CISO figure out a way to do security in a mainly industrial company. So sat the security team down on one side of the room, had a big whiteboard, and said, all right, tell me what matters to this company. Tell me the things that you're defending. What is the stuff that you consider important, that you consider high value, that you are going to protect? And so they gave me a long list. And I kept them in the room, and then I brought in the executive staff and said, now, and I covered up the other side, right? And said, all right, tell me the things that matter to this company that security team should be protecting. How much do you think that stuff overlapped? Really little. And it's amazing, because the people that were sitting on the right-hand side were naming off systems, and they were naming off applications, and the people that were on the other side were naming off business processes, right, and intellectual property. So if you got lucky, that business process and intellectual property actually lived on some of the systems these people mentioned, Well, there wasn't a whole lot of crossover. And so that's why this question matters. What are you protecting, who from, and what resources? So a model is required, and I tell you, I had to think about like how I want to do it, because there's a lot of ways to threat model. There's a lot of ways to do, modeling SOC efficiency and effectiveness and threats and resources and stuff, and they all pretty much equally suck. I mean, some of them are really complex. Some of them have multiple volumes of books written on them. Some of them have big backings of massive companies, which is fantastic, right? Some people start with source code and work their way up. Some people start with applications and work their way down. Some people start with people. It doesn't matter what you do it. You got to understand the applicability of the thing that you're teaching. So I thought, all right, I'm looking at mainly the mid-market and enterprise, not the people that can afford to have a $250 million securities SOC ops budget, right? But like the Fortune 250 and down. And so what do you all have in common? Well, you have some tools. You probably are trying to figure out who the bad guy is that you're trying to protect yourself from. And so you're looking at what am I defending, right? What resources do I have, and what is my level of capability? So these are the three things we're going to pivot this model around. The first one is the most important. Like, what am I defending? Having that sit down with yourself and actually knowing what it is that you're trying to protect, what's valuable, and I'll show you like where my head starts. What resources do I have? That's important to me, because I assume that I'm not going to get another quarter of budget. Like, I'm not going to get any more money to buy anything else. All right, what can I do with the stuff that I have? My dad taught me that if you want to fix something, you first look at what's left in the garage. All right, what do you got in there? What kind of spare parts do you have? What kind of tools do you have? And if you're looking at, if you're looking at a Tesla and you've got a garage full, like I do, a garage full of old Craftsman tools, you're probably not going to be successful, right? You got the wrong tools for the job. And then the last, but of course not least, is what is my level of capability? What can I do? Do you guys know what model I'm talking about that I'm basing this off of? Anybody seen the pyramid before? So I'll show you. I want to start with a simplistic threat model. So super easy. Super easy to use, and not so. And here's why this is important to me. I want to be able to develop something and then go into a business environment and use that same thing to talk to the people that make decisions and write checks about why this is important. Does that make sense? Right? Because there's way too many threat models that get way too deep in the woods, and if you take that and you try to bring it into the executive level, the leadership level, they're going to look at you like, I don't know any of those words. So I order and orient my model around capability. And capability, this is not meant to be funny, but it tends to be. Look, there is a point at which budget actually stops making a difference. Right? This is an inverse hockey stick curve. 26 years in the biz, I can tell you this for a fact. I will live and die on this hill. There is the first dollar you spend, huge difference from zero. The next 100 you spend, really big difference. The next 100,000 you spend makes some difference. The millions after that, you're just pushing up a notch, right? And the same with competence. Competence is, how good am I at this? What is my maturity level of my organization? So if you have an organization that is super high competence, but you have a really low budget, they're not going to be super effective. They're going to be doing what's called superhuman activities, right? Anybody work in a SOC like that today? Where you have a really high competence team and they're told to work with, do the best you can with these three things. It works out pretty much the same every time. You get burnout. You get people that do a really good job for a bit and they go, screw this, I can do better someplace else, and they leave. So what are you realistically capable of as an organization? You got to decide your level of capability. And yes, everybody overestimates. We all have egos. Right? Nobody says, I really suck at this. The reason this is all important, yes, this is a Game of Thrones reference. You can't fight dragons with fire extinguishers effectively. And if you look at, I've had this image in a bunch of corporate slides, and it always gets taken out. But the impact, I think, makes sense, right? We think there is a fire. So we grab the nearest thing we have, and that is a fire extinguisher. Then we run out to the enemy and realize, oh, that's napalm. That's not going to work. But by then, it's too late. So knowing what the capability is, knowing what the enemy is, or what the other side is doing is important. All right. Who knows? Who's seen this before? Okay, we are not going to discuss this entire thing. This is not my original work, by the way. There's a dynamite analytics link in here in the presentation if anyone wants to go check it out. This is a very, very good model. It is also unreadable from the back or from the front.
You mean the link is dynamic, so we can create this layer? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, dynamic analytics. You can look at dynamite analytics threat profiling, and it's pretty easy to find. I forget the guy's name that wrote it, but it's in my slide notes. But this is so unbelievably well thought out. But I'm going to focus. Forget the other half or 2/3. We're going to focus here on this top right-hand corner. In the red are the types of attacks. In the green are the types of defense. So when you look at your environment and you go, all right, I have some basic endpoint protection, I have a firewall, I've got some IDS, IPS stuff. Cool, let's go fight nation states. You're going to have a bad time. That's kind of the basic of this, okay? So now the fun begins. And again, this is the part I encourage you guys as we go through this. If you want screenshots, go for it, but we're going to make this available. I'll put it on our stationery and get it off this one. I'll get John the prezo later, or you can swap me a card or contact info, and I'll get this to you later. This is the how. So remember, first and foremost, I will acknowledge right here, right now, all models are bad. Hopefully this one's useful. If you find some utility in it, if you find that it does something for you that something else that you've tried hasn't, I encourage you to try it. It's really easy. And generally speaking, where I have implemented this for teams, there's a couple of aha moments. And I'll show you where you can find them. All right, so we start with what is known, and I'm going to give you guys an example. We iterate rapidly and validate data. This is the kind of thing you want to do quickly and then be able to go back to and expand. I will tell you the exercise that predates this. The thing you got to do first is sit down with somebody that is not IT and ask them what the important things in the organization are. Is it firmware that updates tractors about how deep to plant seeds? Just hypothetically speaking here, is it the thing that tells the assembly line how quickly to go and where to place the widget that keeps the car together as it rolls off the assembly line? Because that happens around here just a little bit east of here, I think, right? Belvedere? How far is that? Like 2 hours? Hour and 45? I don't know. Never mind. Close enough. All right. So map your assets is where I'm starting this. Put all of it together, because if you can't do that, then the rest of this kind of starts to sound pretty bad. But I start super, super high at the business processes, and we work our way down. And to me, it's important to know what's valuable at the business process level. Here's why. Assets from a hey company person, hey CIO, hey line of business leader, which one of your assets are the most important? They probably won't know. But if I ask, what's the key business process that keeps your organization going, right? What keeps you continuing to be able to write me a paycheck and take money from customers? Those are probably pretty key things, I would say. Revenue and payroll, I promise you those are in the top 5 of every company, right? How do you do that? And then you go, okay, what applications are involved in that? They can probably tell you. And then you go to IT and go, all right, here's a bunch of applications. Tell me what systems run these things. And then you go to the systems people and go, or developers and go, great, what's on this? What is the 75-stage microservice thing that we run to make this happen? All right, so you extrapolate things. All right. Identify critical business process, related applications, systems, and components, and we go like this. So here's an example, a very hypothetical, non-real world-ish example of if you had a truck rental company that you may have done a threat model of. And what's important to them? Well, you know, vehicle rental and reservations tends to be an important part of renting vehicles, right? So let's take that key business function, and we're going to draw this out for you. Hypothetically speaking, there are 4 critical applications that make this whole thing work. The scheduling platform, which relies on the allocation database, meaning how many resources, how many trucks, how many people, how much gasoline, that kind of thing, how many spare parts. The location database, because you can't reserve a truck in Cleveland if it's not there. And although apparently the car rental companies don't abide by that lately. Truck maintenance scheduling, right? Because maintenance, again, maybe not so much so relevant if you've ever rented something recently from any of these companies, but maintenance should be important. Let's just go theoretically on that one, right? So is it time for maintenance? Can it be scheduled? Is it at the location? All important things. So let's take the allocation database and say, all right, it's not actually a database. It's in fact a pair of databases. It's in a cluster. And by the way, there's some load balancers and stuff in between that make them actually work. So those are in the model too. So this is kind of what it looks like graphically. And I pull out my favorite security tool, Microsoft Excel. Those of you that have done it, laugh. Those of you that have never done it, don't cry. LibreOffice. In fact, here, this is on Google Sheets or however it's called. So, all right. I'm going to explain this. And on the blue side, see if you're sitting in the back, now you're like, crap, where are my binoculars? On the blue side, that blue vertical, that's the business process. Red, yellow, green, and I guess that's teal. Those are the 4 applications that support that business process. Horizontally, within each of those horizontals, are the systems and components that make that application up. Does that make sense? Okay. So far, so good? And I've taken up just a little bit of time. Cool. So now, how many of you, can you guys read the top of that? Identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. What is that also known as? You all fail Security 101. Come on. Identify, protect, detect, respond. No, nobody? Nobody knows a NIST CSF? I recommend looking it up, NIST CSF, Cybersecurity Framework. It orients everything security. I bet you your CISO knows exactly what this is. If he or she doesn't, then that's a different problem. That's also a problem. But security over the last decade has started orienting around the 5 kind of stages, 5 components of the security framework. NIST has a decent one, and I think this is probably the easiest way to think about it. So identify threats, identify your assets, protect, meaning proactivity, right? Block as much as you can on as many things as you know about, which is why the identify is important. Because if you have 100% coverage on all the things you know about, you still have about 30% coverage. No? Nobody? Really? Okay. All right. I see. I hear you. Detect. It should be pretty obvious. Finding bad people doing bad things as quickly as possible. Respond. Should not be technology based, but you get the idea. And then recover, the thing that nobody ever talks about. Right? the industry has shifted, by the way, from everything was protect. We had antivirus. We had vendors telling you could stop 100% of known attacks, all known and unknown, which was, what was the word for it?
A joke, sorry.
That, exactly. Mike said joke.
A big delusion.
Yeah, self delusion. I would have accepted blatant lie. Yeah, fertilizer, as the Midwest likes to say. But underneath that, okay, underneath the each of those NIST CSF sections, right? I've got tools. I probably could have broken this out into 2 steps, but if you can you guys see my mouse move? There it is. So across the very, very top, you've got the NIST CSF. Underneath it, consider these columns. What technology do you have that helps you to identify things assets that you previously didn't know about, identify bad activity, right? All those things that works towards identification of threats, of assets, of anything, right? So we have our platform, of course, but vulnerability scanners. How many of you guys operate vuln scanners? Okay, right? So that helps you identify. Attack surface management tools. We've all had to buy those, yeah, right? Because people with credit cards buy things. They're called cloud, or lots of other stuff. And so for each of these 5 categories, you write into that column the security tooling that you have that does that job, or that even pretends to do that job, right? Make sense so far? How many of you guys have done something like this? Okay, good, 2. Then you go I, O, and X. So I is implemented. Yes, we have it turned on, plugged in, and the lights are blinking, right? That's usually where security stops. And then you have O, which is operationalized. Like, yes, we are actively using this thing every day, all day, getting value out of it, know how to make it work. And an X is, won't do anything there. So you'll see that entire red column under recover, all X's in this example. So this is a real world example pulled from a company that shall not be named. But you look at the applications in the systems at the most granular level, right? Whether it's an API endpoint, whether it's a EC2 VM, whether it's a Windows NT box you still have on your network, as you probably do, whatever it is, at the granular level, does that tool that you haven't identified, that vuln scanner, do you hit it consistently, or just have it pointed at it, right? Because it's one thing to say, yes, I scanned that IP address space, like, yes, we scanned that net block. And there's another thing to say, yes, I know what's on that net block. I know that I'm not missing any assets on that net block. And by the way, there's other ones there that we're seeing too. Does this make sense? Okay, so this starts to make patterns. This should be your first aha moment. Because we do a really good job of buying security tools, sticking them in the rack, plugging them in, making sure that they're getting their threat intel feeds, that the lights blink nice, that they're connected to our SIM, that all the logins work, and then we got to go do the next thing. Are you actually getting value out of that thing? So is it implemented? Cool. Is it actually operationalized? Does it have operational value? And if you're honest with yourself, that question's a lot harder to answer than we'd probably like. Agree? All right, moving on. Now you get to go through capability. Everybody know the CMMI model, capability maturity? So CMMI. 0 is, 0. You can look up CMMI, but you can actually, remember that pyramid that we built? Had 6 layers. Instead of using CMMI, I recommend that pyramid, because that helps you understand the types of capabilities that you have. And you can see how well that tool is positioned to do that thing. okay? So this should be your second aha moment, because if you look straight across, right, you got all X's, that's a 0. If you've got a bunch of I's and some O's, you're like, it's a judgment call is what I'm telling you. Capabilities is one of those moments where you're supposed to have sort of a heart-to-heart with yourself. You sit yourself down and go, self, how good is this? Right? And I would tell you, err on the side of caution, which means give yourself a point less than you think you deserve. So what does this actually get you? Well, besides a lot of time put into it and a nice spreadsheet. It gives you a rational understanding of capability. I use the word rational here explicitly, and I want to call it out. Because rational to me means I have evidence for it and there's some realistic basis and grounded in real life that gives me that's the evidence for what I'm saying. Right? Buying tools that say they'll stop all threats known and unknown. You're like, wow, I got a 6 capability on that. Is that rational? Do you have any evidence for that whatsoever besides that one vendor marketing slick? Probably not. But in fact, I think if you read the news, you have lots of evidence to the contrary. So it also helps you figure out where your SOC activity. So do you guys, I guess I should have asked this earlier. Do y'all have engineering and operations split apart? Oof. Okay. Well, that's a hard one. If you don't have them split apart, you're already on the hamster wheel and it's rolling backwards. But if you do have them split out, the operations team has one job and the engineering team has a different job, right? The engineering team's job is to make sure that, and I'm going to use a war reference here, military reference, that the machinery of war is oiled and has a constant supply of things that go bang. The operations team's job is to make sure that they can point and shoot rapidly at the right target. Different jobs. So you get focus for SOC activity. Supposed to find, detect, and respond for the most part. So that means you have a fairly good chance of security operations doing their job well. And if you've got the protect column relatively O, that's even better. So you can look at it vertically or horizontally. I can look at this and say, okay, applications 2 and 3 are fairly well covered under detect. They matter. Great. Let's make sure. So this is the question that you're answering. Where can I look that the tools that I have in place will give me answers and hints with high fidelity? So if you get an alert or a ping from a system that does detection of bad things on applications 2 and 3, you should respond. You should not be looking for it on application 4 because you have nothing. Does that make sense? It gives you an idea of where to trust the things that are screaming at you, where they are to be trusted. Now, this also gives engineering a focus for where to grow. And now I start with the X's and then you work towards the I's. Like application 4 is basically hanging out in the wind. And since we've discovered that is important, well, that's probably a problem, right? So now you know, okay, the tools I have that do detection and protection, boy, I should probably just extend them over to application 4 because they work on the other ones pretty well. So get all the X's out of the way and then work towards filling the I's. And you can figure it out. You got to figure out what you want to do. Do you want to go the NIST model and try to get detect and respond all O's across the vertical? Or do you want to go applications horizontal? My advice is go vertical. Go down to columns. It's probably a little bit easier. But it's not universally true. So you can focus your SOC efforts where you are already operationalized, right? And that's where you're going to get the most value out of it. You can develop playbooks. You can improve your accuracy. You can definitely have improved fidelity and scale, which is good considering most of you are, very small scaled shops. Develop capabilities where you're underdeveloped. So then once you know where you're good, great. Go figure out the places where you're bad and go get better at them. We tend to, this is just human psychology, we tend to keep working on the things we're good at. So if you've got a well operationalized, full management product, you're going to keep working on it, keep trying to make it better, even though it's probably good enough. And there's like 17 other places where you should be focusing your efforts. You want to work on increasing coverage. I promise you there's nothing that's quite as embarrassing or that's going to hit you quite as hard as not knowing you're standing on the third rail. There are so many assets and applications out there that get popped, and the security team, first thing they say is, well, I didn't know that existed. Yeah, answer that question. What's out there? He's running out to tune his security tools right now.
You don't take it personally.
You want to increasing visibility and coverage is huge. I would tell you that the identified column is something you probably want to put a lot of focus on, because if you don't know that it exists, it doesn't matter what you do or don't do to that segment. I had an incident many years ago when I was much younger and less gray hair, where I did not know there were nuclear reactors on one of the subnets that I was port scanning. And if you want to hear the rest of that story, it involves very loud things going beep, beep, beep. I'll tell you that over a beverage sometime. Moral of the story, technology that's older than you are, at the time it was technology old enough to drink, probably doesn't do well being bombarded by brand new tech. That is just a fact. So that's mine. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Anybody, if you find anything valuable in this, by all means, do I have a thing? No, I don't. Not in this slide. Bummer. Thought I had a.
Facebook, Twitter.
I don't do the. I mean, I have a Facebook, but I generally don't put stuff on there. Not work stuff anyway. White Rabbit on Twitter, WH1T3RABBIT. Down to Security Rabbit Hole podcast. I will post. This is slideshare.net. I will post this too. Here, actually, because I'm kind of funny that way. Here. Yep, too big. There you go. Anybody want to scan that? I promise you it doesn't go to anything bad.
This is a test. Don't try it. He's looking for clients.
No, that gets you to my, I think that gets you to my LinkedIn page. Yeah, that gets you to my LinkedIn page where I pretty much post everything. All right. There you go.
We're good.
Cool. Thanks for taking the time, and hopefully that was valuable.